Okay, so on the red slice, and then I erased the R for red, but I'm gonna leave what I wrote down so that you can see what technique it is. The red that I'm using, and I'm just gonna use straight out of my tray, is the alizarin crimson. And so the first thing that I need to do is get it hydrated. And I need to switch waters. And then I'm also gonna use a piece of palette paper for mixing. Okay. Want that to be kind of in the screen. All right, so first things first is the watercolor in the paste form is really, really strong, and we don't ever use it pure like that. So I'm gonna grab, so this, even if we talk about desaturation with watercolor, even not only is desaturation for watercolor based on its pigment value, so coming straight out of the tube or right out of the pan, but it also is its water content too, because the more water you add to it, the less saturated it gets because it's more water to pigment. Okay, so it's kind of like double fold on that. Okay, so I'm just kind of scooping up some water, putting it into this alizarin crimson right in my well, and then I'm gonna mix that up, and then I'm gonna bring it over onto my mixing paper, palette paper, freezer paper, whatever you want to call it. So here I use, on watercolor, I use brushes more than palette knives, unless I really need to mix a base color first, and then I'll mix that with a palette knife and then add my water sometimes. Okay, so now I'm going to bring some of the red over here. And really, I can also work straight from the well, too. Okay, because our first one's just going to be pure red. And I've got it pretty strong, so I think I'm going to add a little more water and add a little more water. Okay. So the first technique is called wet on dry, and what that means is like how you've been painting this whole time on the back of the color wheel. You just go straight to the paper, okay? Your biggest goal here is you want just a nice, even coating. Okay, you'll probably notice that your watercolor paper has kind of started to buckle a little bit, get wrinkly and kind of bumpy, lumpy. When we actually do watercolor paintings, I'll be giving you guys drawing boards, and you'll actually tape your paper down so that it stretches as you're painting. Okay? All right, so don't forget when we do this, we're gonna just keep moving down slice by slice, and so you have to leave a little area of just paper so that your colors won't bleed into each other. Okay? All right, so we're gonna be moving on to the wet on wet technique, but we need to make our first desaturation step. So if we're working with red, what color do I need to pull from? What was it? Green. Okay. So I'm going to make sure that my brush is cleared out. And I'm going to go and hydrate my green. I can kind of turn my paint palette here. This is my green all the way up here. So I'm going to get that hydrated. And then I'm going to pull that over onto my palette. And I want to try and make sure that I keep the green and the red kind of like far away from each other. so that they don't start kind of moving on the paper. And okay. So to control our color mixing with watercolor, let me kind of move this around, maybe. There we go, so you can see it. Okay, so how we're gonna control with watercolor, if you guys notice with your brushes, it totally just like sucks up that watercolor. So I would grab your smallest, skinniest brush that you have to use for mixing. Okay, so Paige, we just started with watercolor, basically. So you'll need to get with Emma and Abby to see everything you need. And then Emily and Mackenzie, I bet Shayla could probably get you caught up. Like, she's just doing a lot of mixing today because she doesn't have her actual wheel. So she's kind of just practicing. But they can get you caught up. I also video recorded it, and I'll put it in Canvas so that you can watch the demo later too. Okay. Okay, so Paige, we're doing like kind of two different things here. We're learning how to desaturate our colors, but we're also doing techniques at the same time. So you're eventually going to need a lot of things like saran wrap and masking tape, and it's all over here. And I have all the paints laid out that you need too. So I don't know if you want to go on and start getting all those, or if you just kind of... Oh, okay, do you at least have red, and can maybe get yourself at least red and green, and then you could do that with us? Because I'm planning on just finishing it out.
I have red.
Okay, how about you just come over here and get what you need? See what time we get out of here today. 9. Oh yeah, we got like, it's only 8:20 right now. Okay, so Abby, Emma, I'm gonna get my smallest brush, and I just want to start with a little bit of green at a time, and I'm gonna go straight into that red and start my first desaturation. Okay, so it shouldn't really take much, and I can tell that I did go down a step. So I'm gonna do a little test kind of next to it and see if I went down enough. Doesn't look like it. So I'm gonna blot that back up, kind of like that. So like an erase. You only need a tiny, like just a little bit of every, of saran wrap? Yeah, you only need a little bit of that. And then all of the colors, you only need a tiny little bit of those too. Okay. Yep. All right, so I'm gonna go in with a little more green. We should be good there. Okay, so your wet on wet technique means that you're getting your paper wet first and then you're painting. So if you've already painted the color on there before waiting for me, you haven't done it right. Okay, so what I'm doing, Abby, Emma, is I'm getting my brush with just pure water, and I'm gonna paint that down into that slice first. Just water. And I'm making sure that I'm staying away from the red that's above it. So I'm starting that with the water already. So I've got my color mixed and ready to go, and I'm just painting this area with just water first. Okay, then I'm gonna go in and grab that desaturated color that I mixed up. And I'm just gonna go ahead and start placing that into the water that I've already put down. So you should see like a lot of movement. And pooling of that color. I probably could have added a little bit more green to it. That's all right. Okay, so the wet on wet technique is pretty much like the main characteristic of watercolor. All right, so I'm gonna be moving on to flat wash, but I need to mix my color first, so I need to add more green. And I'm gonna add quite a bit more this time. Let's see if I added too much here. Yeah, that was a pretty big jump. So I added too much green, so I need to come back and get some red and put it back in there. Then I'm going to do another test. Need to add just a little bit more red back in. Okay, that'll work. All right, so a flat wash. For that, you just want your color to be as flat as possible. So you really don't want any like pooling like you had here. So you're really wanting to control it. Make it just one straight wash, okay? So probably wet on dry technique is gonna be the easiest. So I've just kind of grabbed up my large brush, pulling that color in. And I just want to use a little bit at a time. So I just want to use just a little bit, kind of let it dry, soak into that paper. And then add another layer here in a little bit. Because I also want to see that I'm desaturating it as well. So I'd got it too green at first, and I went back and added red. Okay. All right, now I'm gonna move on to my graded wash, but I need to mix up my color first. So I'm gonna add the green in there with my small brush, and then I'm gonna compare. And I think I need to do just a little bit more green. Well, only a little bit. Okay, now with graded wash, you have to do a wet on wet technique. So you're starting with brushing water down first. So I've got my paintbrush. And I'm wetting that down first, and I got it pretty wet. I can see like the water pooling a lot. So I'm gonna go in and dry my brush and then just kind of go back and brush on top of it to pull some of that water out of there. Okay, and then for graded wash, you just want the color to really be heavy on one side, and then it just gets lighter and lighter as it moves over. So really, I'm just gonna be painting only on kind of the left side here. And then I'm just gonna let that color kind of just fade out over to the right-hand side. So it might take me a few tries and trying to get it kind of even. Okay, notice that it's desaturating down too. It's kind of light, but I can go over it. So here I'm gonna add in more pigment on the left-hand side. And then just kind of coax it over to the right. But it should get lighter and lighter as it goes over. Okay, so you guys can kind of see that I keep coming back and like adding more pigment into that left-hand side. And then I do try to kind of coax it over to the right just a little bit. And then if I have pooling, I kind of dry that brush out and fix the pooling a little bit. Okay. So to get that look a bit more graded, I'm going to take my brush kind of dry and I'm going to start kind of pulling up some of the pigment over on the right hand side. So I have a pretty distinct, like it's darker or there's more pigment over on the left hand versus the right. So you might kind of have to work at it a little bit. Okay, and then these last three slices that aren't labeled, they're just those desaturated colors. So I'll kind of fix that. Oh, okay, that doesn't surprise me. I can't get in to do a grade right now. Put whatever you think. Wow. She needs a fur transfer. Actually, I think she's got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. Abby, Emma, and Paige, you think you can get these? They're just changing your color. Okay, so Paige, what we're doing is we're desaturating colors with their complement. So like it's red and green that go together. And so what we're doing here is that we should be getting pure red here. And then by the time you get to this little middle slice, it should be a neutral brown, like not too red, not too green, just right, okay? And then we're just trying to also do the techniques at the same time, okay? This one's wet on dry, this one's wet on wet. So then you just put your water down, like straight water down on that first and then the color on top. Then the next one's a flat wash, and that's basically just how you've been painting this whole time. Your goal is you just want nice even color. And then graded wash, that one should be a wet on wet technique where you water it down first, and then just one side of it should be darker than the other. You should be able to see that, okay? All right, so since we already have green out, why don't we just kind of flip this over, bless you, and do green, and then you've got just the two techniques there. Okay, so we'll do the two techniques and then we'll move on to the next color. So I'm gonna kind of turn my color wheel around. So Paige, maybe you'll be able to pick up with us here on the green. Okay, so for the green and the pure color, so this will be easy, you need to get your little container of Epsom salt. So if you can't remember which one is Epsom salt, which one's rubbing alcohol, do a very light sniff. Okay, so that one was rubbing alcohol. Epsom salt won't smell like anything. So Paige, everything that you'll need is over there, like little piece of tape, salts. Okay. Okay, so for the green Epsom salt, first thing I want to do is erase out the G, but I'm going to leave that the Epsom salt's there. And then for the green that I have on my paper here, I want to kind of take some of it away because the Epsom salt solution, I don't want it to be in that green the whole time, so I need to separate this out. So I'm going to take some of this green and just put it in a separate location. And then I'm going to clean my brush off. And then I'm going to dip it into the Epsom salt solution and add it into that green. So I did kind of like 3 like pulls. And then I'm going to paint that into this space. Now I'm using my tiniest brush and it's taken forever. So I'm going to move on to a bigger brush. And this you won't be able to see the effect until it's dry. So I'm going to clean this. I'm going to pull some more of the Epsom salt solution to kind of stretch this color out and to really make sure that I'm going to get that effect that I want. Yeah, mix it with the Epsom salt solution. Yeah, not all of your green, kind of separate some of it out. And then really get it to pool up. So really saturate that area.
How much longer do we have in here?
We have about 30 minutes.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, so I'm just kind of really filling that space up, letting it pool in certain areas because that's where that technique is going to come through. Real nice. Real nice. Okay. All right. How am I moving too fast or am I doing okay? Doing okay? All right. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the saran wrap, but I need to desaturate this green pile that I have. And then I'm just going to move on to the next techniques, okay? I think you guys understand desaturation at this point, hopefully, okay? And then Paige, if you don't, we can talk and get you more on track, okay? Just the other two were here during when I started with everybody else.
I have the basics because of last year.
Yeah, that's true. This one is a little more accurate. Like last year when we did it with the kind of color mixing like that, it was real bad trial and error. Like, remember when we did blue and orange and a lot of people got green? Yeah, that shouldn't happen. It should be a lot more gradual. So that's what we're getting here. Okay, so saran wrap. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to desaturate this green a little bit by pulling some red from my paint palette. And red's pretty intense, so I'm using my small brush here. And then I'm going to kind of do a test to see if it's dark enough. I'm going to go just a little bit more. So I'm going to grab just a little bit more red. Here we go. That should be good. Might have went too far. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill in that section. So same thing, you kind of want that to have a good amount of watercolor in it. Be really careful on not getting it up into the space above it. And you guys will probably notice or have noticed how you control where your watercolor goes by your brush. So wherever you stop that brush, wherever that water line stops, the watercolor does not go past that water line. So I don't know if you've been noticing that or not, but okay. So I'm going to get that real nice and hydrated. Then I'm going to take my saran wrap. I'm going to kind of crinkle it up real good and then open it back up. But I want it to be real crinkly, wrinkly. And I want to kind of judge like the size of that little space there. So the crinklier your saran wrap, the better. And then I'm just gonna press it right on top. And then I'm just gonna leave it. And it's gonna stay there, and then you're gonna see what it looks like tomorrow. Or Friday. Okay? All right, so as far as like red and green, that's all I'm gonna show you for right now. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going with the colors that have the techniques to them. Okay, and here I'm actually just gonna go right next to green, and I'm just gonna do blue first. We've got salt and we have rubbing alcohol. Okay, so with blue, what do I want? I'm looking for an eraser. Okay, so the salt is just gonna be pure blue. So I'm going to get my paintbrush and start adding some water to my blue in the paint palette, which is here in the middle for me. And then I'm going to bring it over here onto my mixing paper. Little water to that, it's pretty strong. Okay, and then so for my first blue tier, for the salt, I want it to be pretty saturated with watercolor, so quite a bit, letting it pool up. Careful not to go into the other spaces next to it. I just really like this blue color too, it's pretty. Just sign out on the clipboard that's next to the door. Okay, so really getting it nice and pooled, so really adding, okay? Then you're gonna grab your little container of, oh cool, salt, which for me now it's all over my desk. And then you're literally just gonna drop the salt down on top of it. Okay, and again, you'll just let that sit there until tomorrow, and then you'll scrape it off. Okay. Okay, and then I'm trying to get the salt kind of out of that rubbing alcohol area. Wake my computer back up. Okay, now for the rubbing alcohol, I need to take my blue down a notch, so I need to activate my orange by adding water to, adding water to it. And this orange is kind of on the yellowish side, just a little bit. So I'm gonna add just a touch of this alizarin crimson to it to kind of bring it more to a nice stable middle of the road orange. Okay, so now I'll bring that over onto my paint palette paper. There we go. Okay. And then I'm just gonna use just a little bit at a time here. Mix that with my blue. I think I still, well, let's see. That got pretty green. So that means my orange is still too red, or too yellow, sorry. So I'm gonna work at kind of mixing this back up. I'm gonna put this orange back into my well here, add more red, and then retry.
They're supposed to turn like turquoise, kind of like an olive color.
In which one?
Or when you put orange and blue.
When you're adding blue to orange.
When you're adding or orange to blue. I'm getting the turquoise too.
It might be just a little bit. If you're getting turquoise, there's probably too much yellow in that orange.
Well, I added more red and it's like
Still getting, okay, so let me see what I'm gonna get here. Is it for your first step too?
yeah.
Like it turned turquoise? Okay. Well, that's what kind of mine did a little bit. And I thought that that was too big of a jump. So I kind of did a little remixing. So let me see what I get here. Okay. So I'm going to use my smallest brush and I'm just going to pick up a little bit of orange at a time. We really should, I don't think we should be really going to turquoise blue that fast. But we'll see what we get here. Is it kind of like the turquoise noticeably like green? Can you see the green in it? Or is it just, okay. If it's noticeably green, it's too far too fast for your first step. So let me see. So here, like what I'm getting is more of like, I guess I would kind of say it almost looks like a mix between like a sapphire blue and it's not noticeably green. So if it's noticeably green, either your orange is too yellow or you went with too much orange to start with. Okay, so here I'm just kind of getting a darker, like sapphire blue. So it shouldn't, yeah, should not be green. So if it's green, you need to do a little bit of remixing. Either you got to fix up your orange or you just got to use less orange when you're adding into your blue. Okay, so with this one, we're doing the rubbing alcohol. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay. So I've just kind of done a flat wash on it. Now I'm going to clean my brush out really good. I'm going to find my rubbing alcohol. That's it right there. Just a gentle sniff. And then I'm going to dip my brush in there. And then you three watch what, hopefully if it works right, watch what happens before you do it. So I'm gonna dip my small brush in there, and then it should hopefully, there we go. It should like really resist it. So you can kind of just get in there and draw some designs. And then really wash your brush out. Okay guys, so when you're doing like orange and blue complementary, if you're hitting greens, like at the very beginning, you're going too fast. So you should just be getting kind of darker blues as you go. So it's really gentle mixing there, okay? All right, now I'm gonna flip my wheel over and work on the orange since I've got orange here. And I've got a lot more techniques there. Okay, so with these, we've got to put like a layer down and then we have to like come back to it, okay? So, with glazing and transparent layering, that is basically to show you how you can change up the darkness of your watercolor in like layers. So glazing, what we're gonna do is you're gonna start off with pure orange, and I'm gonna add quite a bit of water to my orange. And I'm just gonna do a flat wash with just pure orange, and I'm gonna let it dry, and then I'm gonna come back to it. And watercolor people, we're probably gonna have to finish this even tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, but Friday. Okay, so glazing. We're gonna just have to come back to that in a little bit. So grab some of your pure orange and set it off to the side, because we'll need that for glazing. Okay, on transparent layering, I need to desaturate it. And so I'm going to take a tiny amount of blue, like tiny. And I'm gonna mix that in with the orange. And it does not take much. I mean, I put barely any in there and I can tell the difference, okay? So transparent layering, we're gonna do like the same thing that we did with glazing. I'm gonna start with my small brush so that I can keep that line divide there. Kind of make my area where I don't want the watercolor to go out of. And I'm gonna fill that in as a flat wash. I'm gonna let it dry, and I'm gonna come back to it later, just like with the glazing. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're technically not done with that. We're not done with glazing, and we're not done with transparent layering. We might be able to get another layer added on to glazing today, maybe. Transparent layering we'll have to hit tomorrow. So glazing, it really needs to be dry for it to work. So we might have to hit both of those tomorrow, okay? Hard edge and soft edge, those are easy, okay? So I just need to go and desaturate a little bit more, and we won't be filling it, well, we won't be filling in the whole space. So I'm gonna grab just a little bit, tiny bit of blue, add that to my orange to desaturate it down further. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go half of this, and I'm just gonna use this brush and really just make kind of like a sectioned out shape in there. So what I'm showing is I'm showing a hard line made by my paintbrush. That's what hard edge means. So you're making a hard, crisp line. Okay. And for soft edge, we're gonna be kind of doing the same thing. I'm gonna desaturate my orange down again, but then I'm gonna do kind of a wet on wet technique, but only, I'll show you. I'll start with the hard edge, and then I'll show you how you turn it to soft edge. Okay, so tiny bit of blue. And mix that in with the orange that I already have. I'm gonna go ahead and paint that area the same way that I just did the hard edge. Okay, like that. I'm gonna clean my brush off. Then I'm just gonna grab my brush with just water, and that halfway line that I made, I'm gonna grab this brush and kind of scumble it up with just the water. And then I can kind of pick some of this up and pull it. And then that's what changes it to soft edge. And I can continue kind of like painting water up to the top here to let that edge just kind of fade out. Now it almost looks like just kind of a wash, okay? All right, I think that's really all the time that we have for that today. So we'll finish up the, actually, you know what? The violets, they don't take that long. We'll finish up on Friday. We'll finish on Friday. Okay.